we're going to talk about it. I think this is something that dovetails really nicely from our last conversation where I asked you guys about specifically, hey, if you had 100K to spend on user acquisition, how would you spend it? And pretty much everyone was like, that's a stupid question. You should really just spend it on your infrastructure and back end. And why'd you stop recording? Jonathan, you stopped recording. Dude, are you back? Oh my God. I was literally just going for a natural segue and he's gone.
You were crushing it too. That was the
like,
best intro you've ever done.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wiggled my headphones and it just popped me out. I didn't even click a button.
No, if it like thinks you're taking your headphones out, it mucks the whole thing up. That's the one thing with like AirPods or headphones. Yeah.
It just stops the recording for everybody if someone's headphones wiggle.
Apparently.
Are you that's the craziest hidden nuke feature in this thing?
Great though.
Someone could unplug and it just nukes the whole thing.
Build something like that in WeGive, where it just literally kills the entire product if you try to
they're layered all. There's a lot of landmines in there.
Those are the WeGive Easter eggs.
Yeah, just like, hey, we're killing your entire donation processing for the season.
There's a lot of Easter eggs, trust me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right, Nonprofit Syndicate podcast. We are on episode, this is 6 now. We're still here. Hopefully people are still listening. I think they are. Feedback's been good so far, guys. So thanks for showing up again and bringing some value. We're going to be talking about donor retention today because last time, one of our last episodes that we recorded, I kind of put it to you guys of, hey, if you had 100K to spend on new donor acquisition, what would you do? And you all pretty much roasted me and were like, I would spend at least half of that on infrastructure and making sure I do retention well. So with that in mind, today we want to talk a lot about retention and kind of dive into the weeds on what does donor retention look like. And so to level it up, just to get your kind of like hot take opinions on it, why do you guys think, in your experience, nonprofits are so addicted to this like hamster wheel of new donors, where they just get on it and they don't want to get off, and they're always chasing that shiny object of new donors, new donors, new donors? Why is that? Talk to me a little bit about your experience with that.
Who wants the first swing on that?
Dude, you talk first. You go first.
Me? So, I mean, I think that it's the only viable option when the bucket's leaky, right? And so I think there's this whole the only real option for like sustainable, scalable growth for these organizations would be to have retained donors, right? That give on a consistent basis, obviously. And the number one source of new donor acquisition is from word of mouth with other donors. It's not even close, right?
Yeah.
And that virality loop creates a growth coefficient where if you just steward your existing donors extremely well, which, easier said than done, you should theoretically be able to achieve organic growth if you're doing good work and communicating it well. That's rarely the case because it's super difficult to communicate that stuff super well without spending a lot of money.
What do you think? What are some of the challenges to doing that well? Like you're saying, like it's really challenging to do it well. Why? Like, why
because it's storytelling, right? And so it's kind of like in, I can't help myself, but like a metaphor, if we get a bunch of investment for this podcast, we get $2 million from the dumbest VC in the world, then we've got to send investor updates, right? And we would send an investor update probably once a month, and it would have a ton of analytics. It would have financial models. It would have anecdotes about industry movement, about things we're doing on hiring, blah, 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 blah. A lot of information. When if we do that well consistently, what ends up happening is we'll end up getting more investors. The investors be like, this company's killing it.
Yeah.
You scale that down to an example of like a Kickstarter or one of the crowdfunding platforms for like products.
Yeah.
And like those platforms have built those features as well, right? I don't know if you've ever been on one of those platforms, like purchased a product early. They do investor updates, and it's like videos or photos, but it's like, almost like a newsletter. I'm like, here's how things are going on this thing that you purchased. And so when those, like the investor model of marketing, if we will, is extremely challenging to do well at scale. It's a lot easier if you only have a certain amount of time and you're a small nonprofit. The thing that makes the most sense is go try to get really large checks from major donors. That's the thing that makes most sense for sure. If you're doing a, 5 million a year or it's getting larger, then you can't just go keep filling the gap with really large checks from major donors. That still needs to be a revenue channel, but a channel needs to exist that's a sustainable, recurring channel, ultimately, right? And so I think it's a difference between one-time purchasing and sustainable recurring, right? The business models that exist out there where it's sustainable recurring, it's all about retention and conversion and funnel optimization. And the ones where it's like one-time purchasing, it's all about acquisition, right? And acquisition still needs to happen, and it funds both, so acquisition gets optimized, and that I think creates a hamster wheel, essentially. So I think it's a communication, the ability to communicate well across a scale, if you will. Was that too like ephemeral of an answer?
No, I think you're on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll jump on that a little too. I think what you basically just said too is it requires the organization to change, and that doesn't mean large change, but it means you have to update with your story. So if you're telling the same story over and over again, it only works on new acquisition, new donors, because if they've never heard it before, it's easier for me to get excited, to want to join, to want to be part of what you're doing. But if there's nothing new or nothing growing from that story, like, hey, we did the thing, and thanks for your money, just give us more, ongoing, and maybe we'll do another thing, then that's harder to retain people, because it's like, okay, but what are you doing? Or what else are you doing? Or what's the bigger goal? Like, I know that building wells or feeding the hungry or whatever it is one of your main pushes, but what's behind that? And what happens if you were to complete your goal? What's next, or what are you doing? And so I do think, to your point, like the hamster wheel is, if we don't have a new story to tell, if we're not good at telling stories, or we're not willing to grow the organization, further beyond what we're already doing, then we have to be on the hamster wheel, or else we can't do anything else. If you want to get off the hamster wheel, and go run in the wild kind of thing, you have to get off the hamster wheel, but you have to tell that story. You have to your point, you have to tell your story, but you have to grow the story. You can't just stay where you are. So if you've got the $5 million donations and now another, large group of donors wants to give you another 5 million, you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again, because you only needed $5 million to do it the first time. Why should they give you an extra 5? What are you going to do different? If you're just going to employ more people to do the exact same thing, that's not growth. That's just, staff bloat. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, is that you kind of have to be on the hamster wheel unless you're also willing to grow as an organization.
What do you think, Schwab?
I think at the end of the day, the issue is that we've become an industry that's addicted to activity, and we choose the easiest activity to follow.
Yeah.
I think the reason we're addicted to acquisition is it's a very easy thing to show activity to impact.
Yeah.
I spent X, I did Y, we got Z number of new donors. Retention is ethereal. We don't know what's going to retain those new donors out the gate. It takes a lot longer to prove that what I'm doing is affecting retention.
Yeah.
Retention is a 6 to 12 month window of indication of impact. Donor acquisition is nearly immediate.
Yeah.
So again, I said it last time, I'm not a fundraiser, I just consult. But
Yeah.
if I were sitting in a development department and my boss said, we need $100,000 this year, I could say, okay, well, I'll spend $500,000 to acquire 1,000 new donors at $100 each. That effort is a lot easier than saying, I'm going to try these 5 things that are going to cost me between nothing and a couple $100,000, and maybe by the end of the year we'll have retained enough donors to have made up that $100,000 gap.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things is what you're hitting on, Schwab, is like as humans we're wired for these like dopamine drops, right? And like new donors are a dopamine drop, and it literally it's like there's that phrase like hope springs eternal, right? Like new donors represent this like kind of emotional feeling of hope that's like, oh, we got these new ones in. Maybe this time it'll be different, even if all the data says it's not going to be. If you haven't changed anything in your retention process, when you get new ones in, there's this implicit hope of like, maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe this time they'll just magically stay longer. And so I think there is an emotional high that fundraisers and nonprofits get when they see new donors come in the door, because it does feel like momentum. It's, well, new people are finding out about us. This must be great progress. It's like, Jonathan, like you guys know, when you get new customers in, it feels a lot better than just a customer who happens to still be there 2 years later, right? Like you don't
actually.
I
no.
know what you're
Yeah.
gonna say. I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah.
No, I love that we have 2. But like for your sales team, let's say for your sales team, they get way more jazzed up because that's what fundraisers are, right? Essentially the sales team of the nonprofit world. They get way more jazzed up when they close a new customer than they do that the one they sold 2 years ago is still with the company.
Yeah.
Right. It's that kind of dopamine hit of, ooh, new is fun, new is hopeful, new is possibility. The other thing, it's that, I don't know if it's actually real. It's probably attributed to a million people, but I think it's like a Thomas Edison quote. Something about like opportunity gets missed by most people because it comes dressed in overalls and looks like work, right? I think that's the quote. And it's this idea that like we all like the idea of retention, but it looks like a lot of grind, hard work, right? Like it is not necessarily something that, oh, I know that if I do this, I'm going to see, to your point, Schwab, I'm going to see an immediate response. It looks like a lot of going and working in the mine and like just grinding on the little small detail work that can feel really boring, but that you have to just be consistently moving in that direction to get it right. And it doesn't look sexy, and it doesn't look exciting, and it doesn't give you a dopamine hit. So most of us as humans are just naturally not going to want to work on that stuff. We're going to work on the stuff that gets excitement and that provides instant hope, right? I think there is a psychology level thing going on with those of us who work in nonprofits, for nonprofits, consult with, fundraise, that it just feels better to get new donors than it does to do a lot of heavy lifting work on stuff that doesn't immediately move the needle.
I'm not. I would add to that. Not just it feels good internally, but I would say that it's the only thing that's like certainly quantifiable.
Yeah.
Right, as Schwab was saying, right? Like it's for us. I love getting a new customer, but actually, the team gets actually more jazzed when we see like the revenue growth and expansion when a customer's like doing like a lot more than they were and they're using all the features of the product. Everyone's like way more pumped because that's case studies, that's customer references, that's actual real revenue, blah blah blah, because we're more usage based on how we price our product.
Right.
So if you're using the product well, then the sales guys make money too.
Right.
So that's
about that, yeah.
That's actually the preference. The something that I was just thinking about as you were talking is, so not only is it not really super easy to quantify, like most of my customers or the nonprofits I've spoken with, I mean, I don't know I maybe only heard 1-2% of them, of the 1,000 nonprofits I've spoken with, that knew what their retention rate was. But a lot of them could tell you what we're trying to fundraise that year. And I think
the donors they got the last quarter,
maybe, right? And I think a part of this problem, and this is just a complete hypothesis, completely, I have no idea, really, but I have a feeling like that there's a structural issue with the fact that nonprofits are really run by their board, right?
Yeah.
And the board wants certain numbers, and the board's completely removed, actually, from the real operations, and they're probably realistically pretty removed from what the normal $120 average donation size donor is looking for and experiencing, right? And they're driving the decisions largely, and the goals. And these short-term goals create short-term realities and short-term problems, I would think.
Something you hit on with the sales guys that I want to dig into is what you essentially told us is the incentives of your sales team are aligned towards retention, not aligned towards sales. And I think maybe what we're looking at is an incentive structure problem for nonprofits, where the incentives are not aligned with actually what they should be. And so it actually makes me think of like, what would it look like? And this is a real question for you guys. Like, what would a retention first fundraising model look like in practice, where the incentives are actually aligned around retention instead of new donor acquisition?
Yeah, I'll jump in a little. I think you'd have to have a whole different training for internal staff and people who are actually, and I'm using the term actually, relational. And that's something that over time we've gotten away from because we have social media, we have all this kind of stuff, and I call it anti-social media because it's really teaching you to be distant and get that dopamine hit as you're talking about and just get kind of quick results. Hey, look, I have 1,000 friends, on here kind of thing. And it's the same for donors, same for acquisition. If the team is structured around growth is number of donors and number of donations kind of thing versus adding in longevity of donor and prioritizing that, saying, hey, yes, it's always great to grow our donor base, and things like that. But excuse me. But what's our average retention rate? And what's interesting is having seen a few of these in the past, some of them, the retention rate is the same as whatever length of service that they're offering. So if they're offering 2-year mission trips or 4-year mission trips, their donor retention rate follows right alongside that because what they're interested in is that person doing the work or that group doing whatever work you're doing. And then once that's done, there isn't a large incentive for them to stay on because for the donor, the work is done. Instead of bringing them into a larger ecosystem from the beginning, saying, hey, we're doing all this work. You're actually supporting the work. And yes, you're directly supporting your person maybe in this or group or whatever, but the work is actually this. And here's how you can continue to do this. And here's how you can do this yourself. Why don't you come do some of the work and that kind of stuff. But usually the donor retention rate was right alongside whatever the work they offered. And so that's the length of their storytelling, as we said earlier. Hey, we did a thing for 2 years and now it's done. So why stick around? And there isn't very good storytelling to say, here's why, here's more of what we're doing and here's why you should do this and why you should stick around, and why we should value that retention length, maybe even more so than the dollar amount in some cases. Now, obviously, case by case, but that I do think we put too much on the dollar amount and the gift frequency, in some cases versus the longevity of the donor, because people know people. I mean, and we can all say this here. You can meet somebody on the street, have a real great conversation. They get to hand you $1,000. It feels great. But you can have a relationship with people and you can build a huge network of of tools, people, resources, things you can bring together community to do something that you can't do with that person that just gave you $1,000. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. Schwab, can we just completely throw our direct mail friends under the bus here and blame this all on them? Let me explain. Let me explain.
His face.
No,
Okay,
we
so
can't.
I'm actually
Hear this.
the shock value was all it was there for. I actually don't mean that at all. So please, someone's gonna clip this out of context and say I hate all direct mail. No, what I mean is like the infrastructure of the way fundraising was done for so long. As we all know in nonprofit space, oftentimes vendors can end up outlasting actually even staff members in terms of the longevity with an organization. And so you end up with this situation where like the tail wags the dog with your vendor relationships. And I do wonder if because the nature of direct mail, which was the predominant way of doing fundraising besides major gifts. So when you're doing like new donor acquisition, appeal kind of stuff, direct mail was for years and years and years the thing, right? So with direct mail though, cultivation gets very expensive. And if there's not direct ROI with projections and reporting, then you kind of train a groove in the brain of the nonprofit to think, well, our main acquisition channel, like we just need to, like when we communicate to people, it needs to be acquisition because that's the thing that's the immediate return. And it costs us a lot to send a piece of postage, so it better be something that gives us ROI. So they're not actually doing cultivation super well with their broad base, right? They're still maybe doing it great with their mids and majors, but like their broad base audience was very like just cost prohibitive to cultivate well and do retention on. And I'm wondering if now that digital has made it very inexpensive to do cultivation on, are we just still seeing some of the like the remains of that kind of direct mail thinking way with cultivation where it's no, but we've been trained on this for so many years that we're really just doing appeal, new donor, because cultivation is very expensive, but they haven't really made the shift to realize, well, digital now you can do cultivation super cheap, so you should be doing a ton of that. I don't know. That's so not blaming our direct mail friends at all, but just saying like, is that a kind of shadow effect of it that's casting over the new way that you should be doing retention and cultivation because of the industry model from the past?
I hear where you're going with that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to challenge it and say it's not a channel or a medium issue. It's a mindset issue.
Right. Totally.
In the same way Ryan was talking about how social media has made us less social, really good fundraising strategies have made us worse fundraisers. Because I'll go somewhere with it. So
Please elaborate.
Let's just leave it there.
Yeah, just leave it there.
Yeah.
It sounds like a quote from a genius 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Right.
It's probably is.
So before direct mail off as a primary fundraising strategy, what did we have to do to engage donors? Write them a letter, pick up a phone and call them, meet with a donor. Now we can update donors about what's happening at scale. Same with digital. Now we can update donors faster at a bigger scale for less cost. But what are we turning our attention from? We're turning our attention to, okay, what can my next update be and how can I optimize my numbers to get 1% to 2% more response versus what would be the impact be if I just called this person, right? And again, you can't call, you have 100,000 donors on your file. You can't call 100,000 donors a year. It doesn't work. But I think what we've fallen into is the trap that, oh, well, I have my direct mail program. I have my email cultivation program. I have my email automations. I have that, I have an app, whatever it is. I have those touch points handled so I don't have to do the touch point myself. And I think that's ultimately what's become the issue is we've turned relationship into transaction, right? And whether it's a mass market appeal through direct mail or an email, I hate the term, but it actually works here, an email blast, right? We've come to accept that as building relationship when really that is just stewarding information.
Yeah. That's a really good point too, because if any of us automated responses to our, spouses or closest friends. And, it's like, yeah, I've got an auto text and an auto email that goes out every week, the same stuff. I mean, you'd lose them very quickly, or they'd be very angry very quickly, especially the wives. And especially if you're not doing anything to build that relationship or keep it going. I mean, it's just logical in real life, like you're saying here. It's like when you go deal with actual human beings, you have to maintain a relationship. You have to do things in order to continue that relationship or grow that relationship. And if you don't, if it's just repetitive, like you said, transaction, I mean, we can spot that a mile away. Everybody can spot what a transaction feels like. And when you feel like a transaction, then you end the transaction. Mm-hmm. And so then you'll go look for another organization that makes you feel like a person again until they don't. And that's why there's the donor hopping. It's really, I don't even think that there's, new donors really out there. I think it's the same donors, and they're all just kind of passing them back and forth at times based on whether or not they feel like they're a part of what you're actually doing, or if they're just a transaction that you're counting in their annual report.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, and something we see not in all fundraising, but in inherently task-based fundraising. When a mission is accomplished, funding stops, right? So we've done some work in the political space, and we worked with a political advocacy firm, and their number one goal was this thing, right? Well, they achieved that thing, and their donors said, great, we did it. We're done. I'm going to go give my dollar to the next thing that I care about because I want to see the world keep changing. I don't want to keep funding, even though the organization still had staff projects and other work they were funding, they hit this huge ripple because the thing that they had talked about for years was now done, right? So I think that it circles back still to what Ryan is saying earlier is we have to be really good at making sure there's a case for continued support, or be ready to accept I have a time limit on my relationship with this donor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay too, right? If you know it, then you can plan to work around it, right? But if you're just hoping that all the effort you put in acquisition is going to keep that donor to stay, that's a different problem to solve.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so I got some questions from our producer, Candace. Shout out Candace in the background. These are actually really good. I think she's just trying to stir the pot with us, which I love. She's just trying to get going. Pot stir. All right, awesome. So thanks, Candace, for sending these in. These are great. So I'm going to ask them to you guys, and I think these are actually really fair questions. Okay. Is retention over acquisition actually just a coping strategy for organizations that can't scale new donor growth anymore?
Do you remember what our response was last week when you asked what we should do with $100,000 media investment?
Yeah.
Fix your foundation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Donor retention is the foundation of any growing organization. Yeah. If you churn 50% of every donor you acquire, or 70 or 80%, you're not going to grow even if you're acquiring more donors now than you were last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to that question, I don't know if I can use this term. I'll think of a different one. But if you're just squeezing your retained donors for more without providing more services or things like that, yes, I think that's a coping mechanism of desperation. Like, hey, the ship's got a hole in it. Can you guys just, cough up a little bit more so we can fix the hole? Then we'll come up with a strategy on how to sail to the island we're going to. Yeah. Sure. In that case, absolutely, it's a coping mechanism. But to Schwab's point, and we'll hear what Jonathan has to say on this too, I think it's, if you can't retain donors, then getting new ones just becomes the hamster wheel, and you're going to burn out.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so retention has been, I think last year was it Neo Summit that it was the big talking point was retention, right? And they talked a lot about it. It's been in the industry for a while now. And maybe the answer is just that it's still not been implemented widely enough. But I do think this is a fair question, is if personalization, relationship building worked so well, because we're kind of painting with broad brushes. There are a ton of organizations that do great relationship building, that do really good personalization, that are calling every single new donor, that are sending a handwritten note to everyone. So if it worked so well, why are the sector-wide retention rates still so weak?
I don't think it's personalization. At all, actually. And I'd push back on that. I think the main thing that's really happening at a meta level here is that boomers were funding most nonprofits a decade ago. Those guys are dying off. Those people grew up in a time where they would receive 1 to 3 cold calls per month. They would receive 1 to 2 direct mail pieces per week. And largely those were personal. And those people grew up without an email address.
Yeah.
So they wrote checks to you because you existed. And because you existed, they had a relationship with you in their minds. Today, the normal person gets not 1 to 3 cold calls per month. They get, on average, 1 cold call per day.
Yeah.
They don't get 1 to 2 direct mail pieces per week. Check this stat out. They get over 550 marketing pieces per year, which is 10 to 15 a week. And guess what proportion of those are from nonprofits trying to fundraise?
I don't know.
25 to 30%.
Yeah.
And the large majority of those direct mail pieces are all marketing and advertising, nothing personal. Your grandma's not writing you a letter. Your friend's not checking in with you. Your sweetheart over in Germany fighting the war is not sending you a letter. It's just people you don't know trying to steal your attention for money.
Yep.
And then you go to email.
It's even worse.
200 to 350 marketing touches per week on average.
Yeah.
So the reality is there is almost no signal, and it's complete noise. And really what people want is to be a part of something meaningful. And so it's not about personalization. It's about providing a meaningful piece of communication. I'll tell you what, I get probably more marketing email, direct mail pieces from nonprofits than you could possibly imagine. Hundreds a week.
I can imagine.
Oh, yeah. We're on those lists.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I throw away 100% of them, right? And they are, the emails, everything, it's all appeal. Ask. Just like everyone else in my life, all this noise. And so I don't think that it's like acquisition is important. And yes, retaining those customers from a business unit economic standpoint, a 10% lift in retention could be a 200% lift in lifetime value revenue. Like those numbers there's no question about those numbers, right? That's just math.
Yeah.
Like I think what's really happening though is this generation that funded nonprofits traditionally that was okay giving you a check every month just because you existed is dying off.
Yeah.
And now the generation that's inheriting all this wealth is going, you are just noise to me.
Yeah.
You are so much noise to me. And so I might write a large check because we sit down together. If we sit down together and we talk over a coffee and I'm hearing about what you guys are doing this year and the vision of the org, and you're asking me about what I care about, like, that's a meaningful touch point.
Yeah.
But that meaningful touch point, lifetime value, could be really high if I'm a major donor. Cost of acquisition is extremely high, right? We could take Schwab and have him go out and meet with every single major donor every single day. You can meet with, could probably get him to meet with 200, right? Maybe 300 in a year. That would be like epic numbers, right? In person. That'd be insane across the nation. And like, what percentage of those guys are going to convert? I don't know, but Schwab costs money, right? That should happen, but if that's what we're doing for what we're spending on, we're going to buy this person to come in and have those conversations.
Yeah.
Who's talking to the person that's not a major donor, that's not going to be able to write a $5,000 check, that's actually just going to give $50 a month? Because surprise, surprise, there's 100 million possible leads on that side of the ballpark, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what's actually happening structurally is that this generation that's inheriting all this wealth is not going to be retained because you exist. They're going to be retained because they are meaningfully communicated with, that they are making a difference in the world. They're making a difference.
So I appreciate that you're bringing this up, and I'm going to do an entirely shameless plug, but this is entirely what our agency was modeled around is how do you take the relationship value of sitting down across from a major donor, sharing a cup of coffee, having lunch, having dinner, whatever that, like having that conversation, and how do you bring that to the $100 donor?
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, you're not going to sit across a table with every single $100 donor on your portfolio. It's impossible, right? But what if you told stories to that donor the same way that you tell stories to someone who's giving $100,000?
Yeah.
Because do you know what it doesn't cost you to do any more of? Tell good stories.
Yeah.
But it does make you change the way you tell your stories. And that's been that's our entire model is how do we scale major donor relationships to every single donor?
Yeah.
And for the organizations who are adopting it, they're seeing wild results.
Oh yeah.
Not because they have 10 times as many gift officers sitting down with 10 times as many people, but because 10 times as many people now feel like they're having a one-on-one communication with the actual CEO or executive director. Yeah. And they feel like they're seeing what's actually happening, and they're not just being asked for the next 10% increase of their gift, right? Which is, that's what fundraising was, last month you gave $10, will you give $10.10 this month? Or if you're really generous, will you give $12 this month? You give $12 next month, will you give $15, right? That's what fundraising was. And it worked, but now this is the impact you're making. Your $15 gift right now takes Sam off of the street tonight, gives him a meal, gives him a bed. He gets clean clothes in the morning. He takes a hot shower. And by the way, when you turn this $15 into a monthly gift, that keeps Sam off the streets, right? It gets him into recovery. It gets him job education. It gives him a stable house where he doesn't have to worry about how he's going to pay rent. So he can focus on cleaning up his life, getting sober, getting education, and getting a job, and building savings and getting on his feet, right? But we never used to talk about that. It was always just your $15 feeds Sam tonight.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow I want to feed Tim, right? So
yeah, what you're both describing, I think, is the sophistication level of the audience, of the donor audience, has grown. Like, just think of it in marketing terms. Like, there are very unsophisticated audiences that you can have the worst ads in the world, but if it's the product they want, like, boom, they're still going to buy the Showtime rotisserie oven on the infomercial, right? And then you work up the list, and like the more sophisticated the audience is, frankly, the better you have to be about telling the story, and the better you have to be about communicating, and the less you can rely on just like bare minimum work to see the results. You have to work a lot harder to get the same results as before. And I think what we've seen, as both David, you, and also Jonathan indicated, is we have seen let's just call it the U.S. donor audience grow in sophistication level as they've been marketed to more over the years. And so now we've kind of reached an inflection point where you can't just market to them anymore. You have to move to something that transcends marketing and gets into an actual relationship building at scale. And I think that's the key to retention, is that relationship building at scale, as you both just highlighted.
I think sophistication's too generous. I think that's too generous.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think they're more sophisticated. I don't. Yeah. I think that they're just more
they expect more.
They have less capacity, and their expectations are higher. Both.
Well, I tell this story when it comes to what donor expectation is, right? It's donors expect to engage with your nonprofit organization the same way they engage with the retail company they just walked out of, right? Black Friday, I went to Best Buy, bought a new TV. It was small, it was for my workout room on the other side of the wall, right? I put my phone number in when I check out. They register my account, bought it, and as I'm walking out, I get an email with a customized video that said, here's how you install here's the TV you bought. Here's installation methods for the TV and the mount that you just bought. Here's instructions as I'm walking out.
Yeah.
That's not hard logic, but if we're not doing but that level of detail, specificity, and individualization is what consumers expect.
Right.
And donors are consumers. So when I get an appeal and I give to put a well in Africa, and then you tell me a story about how I planted a tree on the other side of the country or on the other side of the world, right? You've lost me, because that's not what I wanted to do, right? And I'm not saying that's what, like that, I'm not saying, but that kind of thing is if even if I don't make it clear this is what I'm doing, in my mind as a consumer, it's clear this is what I'm doing. And if you don't respond in kind, you don't know me, and we're done, right?
Mm-hmm. And it speaks to, like, I think there was this battle about 8-10 years ago between, well, we don't want to become Amazon, but we can't just be this overly relational, telling you, like you said, broad stories about stuff that you're not actually interested in. And I remember being part of, a conversation where it's like, no, you have to have both. The idea is we have to allow for the person to do or be who they want to be within your organization. Now, they don't get to tell you necessarily what to do. You're telling them what you're doing, but they get to decide, I want to be the transactional donor and or the relational donor. And based on, some of my gift, because it's like, I value relationship, but I also am a person who's like, if I'm busy, I value the fact that I could do this, donate quickly, but that has to do with infrastructure and tools. So your tools are the Amazon side of this, where you make it easy for me to do the thing that I want to do. But at the end of the day, again, like you said, Schwab, if you're telling me, great job, we're planting trees and we're doing stuff, and I'm like, wait, hold up, that's not the thing I just clicked on, then I feel misled. And that's I think the other thing, the attention span, and our generation, collectively here too, it's Gen Z has a shorter attention span, but we have the questioning attention span, where we're going, I can spot a sale immediately, but I can also spot when I've been hoodwinked. Yeah. And so if I'm out. If I'm not communicated well with, or if I feel like I've been lied to, it's one and done. And so I think it is hard to market to this next generation who's inheriting wealth and then going, okay, what do I do with it? How do I do what I want to do with it? But at the same time, I think just bringing it all the way back to the storytelling. Yeah. If we're not communicating who we are, what we're doing, what you gave to, and why you matter, like all in context, then I shouldn't be surprised when you're either a one and done donor or you leave for something else, because I haven't done a good job telling you who I am, being honest, transparent, whatever, nor have I done a good job listening to who you are. And that goes back to just relationship. I mean, if all I do is talk, I'm not a good friend. If all I do is listen, then I'm also not being truthful, maybe with my, intent or feelings or what we want to do. So without the two-way street, don't be surprised when donors just hop to the next thing, because that's what this generation is about. I want to feel like I did something. And I mean, and I'll throw it out here, like the Passion conferences do this really well with that acquisition. They have a major goal that they have to hit every year, which could be, we're going to sponsor every kid in this country in this organization. And it costs this much. This many people can do it. We have 2 hours, go. Yeah. And they hit those targets. But the retention?
Do they lock them in the room like the pastor where they're leaving so they give $40,000? That would be amazing.
No, but they do encourage you to, just go tell your mom you're using her credit card. No, they don't do that. But it's like they're really good at the acquisition side and giving you the goal. But the follow-up is up to the organization that they're sponsoring. So, because Passion, they might be saying, hey, this is Compassion International, but it's not up to Passion to keep telling you what Compassion's doing. Right. So that's where you get this like burst of acquisition, and then it's dead after that. Yeah. And so we're just in that generation of, quick response. Like you said, I can just, I'm important. And, and that's who you have to market to now.
That's good. All right. Well, I will let Ryan have the last word on that then. This will wrap our conversation on retention for today. We may come back to this at some point. Thanks for the conversation, guys. Thank you if you're watching, if you're listening to the Nonprofit Syndicate podcast. We'll see you back here next week.